So hello, welcome to the video and welcome to Doha in Qatar, and yes, it is a bit hot. Now there's millions of people travel to Doha every year, but about 70% of them only ever connect through the airport. Yes, they get to see the big scary teddy bear. And yes, they might get to see some pretty lights of the city from out of the window. But something like 70% of those people just connect straight on through and go somewhere else. And I always think that's a bit of a shame, because Doha is actually quite nice. I've been here a few times now, and dare I even say that I prefer it to some of its larger neighbours, Dubai. Now it's currently May, and I don't perhaps recommend it quite so strongly at this time of year because it is 36 degrees with relatively high humidity. But I was supposed to come in March, but a couple of impediments to that plan popped up that meant I wasn't able to come then. So I've come in May, I've got 24 hours here, and I'm looking forward to showing you some of the highlights of the city. And I do encourage you, next time you book a trip on Qatar, to take a look at stopping over for a day or two, because there really is quite a lot to see, starting off with the Museum of Islamic Art just over there. Today is a Wednesday, and that is the one day of the week that it is not open, slightly annoyingly, but I have been there before, and I will talk about it a little bit later on in the video. So if you'd like to see what I would suggest you do if you have 24 hours to spend in Doha, stick around. Hi, I'm Matt, and this is Matt's Planet. I aim to entertain, educate and inspire with my travel adventures, from planning to execution. I'll show you how you can travel in style for a lot less than you'd think. So subscribe so you can come with me. So let's start with the Museum of Islamic Art, which is recognised as one of the best museums of its kind in the world. You may have seen some of the pieces of the collection displayed in the Al Safwa Lounge at Doha Airport, if you've been lucky enough to have visited there. The building housing the art is as much of an attraction as the museum itself, as it's a spectacular building with excellent views across the bay. I'll mention that Islam prohibits the depiction of humans in art, so the exhibits focus on metalwork, ceramics, jewellery, woodwork and textiles. The quality of what's on display is unquestionable, even if the mix of exhibits might not be quite what you're familiar with. You'll not find galleries groaning with old masters here. It's a very calm and serene space that is well worth a visit. 50 dirhams will get you in, which is about £10, just not on a Wednesday. Another headline attraction, one that I'd not been to previously, and one that closes on a Tuesday, so was open on the day I was in town, is the National Museum of Qatar. When you're on a trip like this, it's important to stay connected, both to get access to your emails from home, but also to access maps, taxi apps, or to look up the website of various attractions that you're hoping to visit. If you rely on your home mobile plan to do so, when you get back home you're likely to find a massive bill waiting for you. To get around that, I use an Airalo eSIM whenever I travel. It's simple to purchase, install and activate, and it's great value too. I paid just £3.50 to get 1 gigabyte of data for the 2 days that I'm going to be here in Qatar. And they offer unlimited data plans too, if you don't want to have to worry about running out. To avoid accidentally using any of my home plan's data, I make sure both SIMs are turned off as soon as the plane door closes. Then when I land, I make sure my eSIM from Airalo is switched on. In short, mobile data and roaming are both enabled, and it will find the local network and connect. It's as simple as that. Then for the duration of your time away, you can use your phone as normal, secure in the knowledge that your costs have been capped. And I don't really worry about personal safety when I'm in the Middle East, but even so, it is nice to know that I would be connected if I really needed to be. So download and install Airalo today and use it next time you go travelling. And if you use my code MattsPlanet, you'll get some money off your first purchase. Right, let's go and see what this museum is all about. This striking museum opened in 2019 to celebrate the natural and cultural history of the country. Half the exhibits were closed for refurbishment when I visited, but the entry fee had been halved to reflect this, which meant it cost me 25 dirhams to get in, which is about a fiver. And it's very well done, with several substantial installations and lots of information about every possible aspect of the country's history. Oil was only discovered in the 1930s, which in historic terms is very recent, so there are some fascinating filmed testimonies played on a loop about the traditional nomadic life that was the norm only 2 or 3 generations back. Depiction of the human form is not an issue in this museum. I really enjoyed my visit, far more than I perhaps expected, and I do recommend it. It's a pleasant stroll from that museum to the Museum of Islamic Art through the Flag Plaza, although Qatar is not really the place to stroll around in the summer months. I'd define those as May through September, although far northern hemisphere residents may extend that to April through October. It was 36 degrees centigrade for me that day in early May, with about 35% humidity, which rose to 50% in the evening. Manageable for me, but still borderline uncomfortable. It would have been much more pleasant in March, when I'd originally planned to visit. So this is the start of the Corniche, a walkway alongside the water that will take you all the way round to the far end of the city. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, but there's a sort of a pyramid shaped hotel at the far end, which is sort of the other end of the Corniche. And when I first came here, which I think was about 2003, there was a lot less development, and to be honest there was a lot less to do. And I remember taking a taxi to the mall that is attached to that hotel over there, and I walked back. It's about 5 kilometres, so 3 and a bit miles, slightly cooler time of year, and it was delightful. It was such good fun. I really enjoyed it. Local Qataris out in the evening for a wander. There's a few points of interest on your way around, and I enjoyed it so much that the next night I did exactly the same thing. Took another taxi and walked the 5 kilometres back again. Probably don't recommend it in May, but it is one of the experiences to be had in Doha, even if you only walk along it for a short distance, and probably best to do it in the evening, or even better, after dark. Also at this end of the Corniche, across from the photogenic Dow Harbour, is the Pearl Monument. Pearling was the main source of national income before oil, and the tradition is celebrated in a couple of ways, including this relatively modest monument. It dates from the 1980s, and I can only imagine it would be considerably larger and more impactful if it was built today. The Pearl is also the name of a major development on reclaimed land north of the city centre that you will probably see from a plane window on your way in or out of the airport. It's home to a number of luxury hotels and resorts, although I've never stayed there, as you have to battle your way through the city to get there and the traffic can be horrendous. Not to mention that Kempinski's and St Regis's are usually well out of my price range, although real bargains can be had in that calibre of property if you're happy to travel off-peak and endure the heat in summer. I've always stayed south and east of the downtown area, which is the convenient side of town to access the airport, which means I've never spent more than about 10 or 15 minutes getting to or from Hamad International from where I've stayed. For this trip, I was on a bit of a budget, so picked the Hampton by Hilton property, which was located pretty much equidistantly from the attractions I wanted to be able to walk to. Don't believe the distance to attractions quoted on their website. And it was a nice property. The advantage of staying in a recognisable brand is that you're unlikely to be disappointed by what you find. And I wasn't. It was a very decent, if unspectacular property. Even if staying in a branded place like this means you're unlikely to be surprised and delighted by what you find in the way you may be if you stay in an independently owned property. My room was pretty large actually. It offered a decent sized bed, I've seen bigger, with some art above. A comfy chair, you get a large workspace, even if it looks like it was sourced from IKEA. There was a large TV and a surprisingly small wardrobe. It contained what you'd expect, but it suggests that the average stay at this property is not long. And a large bathroom. The water pressure was a bit feeble, but that's often the case in this part of the world where water doesn't grow on trees. Overall, the space was hard to fault and it was in really good shape. I didn't notice any scrapes, dings or dents. Plenty of room to do your morning yoga. Room rates here include breakfast, and pretty much the entire first floor of the property is given over to the restaurant. It's a pleasant space, and it also offers all-day dining later on, even if the menu is a little narrow and unimaginative. It's always nice for a hotel to have a restaurant though, and whilst it wasn't exactly a long walk to independent restaurants, there aren't any eating options right on the doorstep. Breakfast was actually pretty good, with quite a few hot and cold options. I'd be happy to stay there again, although I probably won't, as Doha is a place where you can aspire to stay with brands that might normally be out of financial reach for you, particularly if you travel when it's hotter. That said, I originally paid £47 a night to stay here in March. I said I was on a budget, and those premium brands were significantly more expensive. When my trip was cancelled, the hotel very kindly allowed me to move the booking, even though I'd booked a non-refundable rate, so thanks to them for that. And as it was really quiet when I did travel, Hotels.com actually refunded me £6 a night for my stay. Not sure they should have, and I didn't expect it, but I wasn't going to argue. Qatar is an Islamic state with Islam as the state religion. You will hear the call to prayer, especially near the Abdullah bin Zayed Mosque in the centre of town, although I didn't hear it anywhere else, and I certainly wasn't disturbed by any pre-dawn calls in my hotel room, which has not always been the case in that part of the world. Qatar is a relatively strict observant of Islam, so there's no chance of a bacon sandwich, and alcohol sales are limited to hotels. Not all hotels though, as the Hampton by Hilton was dry. The UAE is the same, in that all bars needs to be linked to hotels, but they're much fewer and farther between in Doha, plus there's strict ID requirements for entry. I'd found an Irish bar in the Best Western Plus hotel a couple of blocks from where I was staying, and it helpfully made it clear in its Google Maps entry that a passport or ID was required for entry. So I decided to head over for a beer, purely for research purposes, you understand. I don't routinely carry my passport around with me, but I always carry my driving licence, but it turns out that you need either a passport or Qatari ID, so they wouldn't let me in, which annoyed me, and pointing out that I had complied with their online requirements got me nowhere. I consoled myself that it may well have been the most expensive beer I'd ever bought if they had let me in, as alcohol is priced robustly to reflect its haram or forbidden status in the country. So be warned, carry your passport if your thirst needs quenching, even if I expect things would be a little more relaxed if you stay in a more touristy area such as that Pearl development north of downtown. You may have noticed a few years back that, as a global footballing hotspot, Qatar hosted the World Cup. A subway system was built as part of the preparations for that tournament, and it's pretty good. £1.20 buys you a daily pass, and the 3 lines will take you around the city and will take you as far as the airport if you wish. I took the metro out to Al Azia, which is the station for the Villaggio Mall. You may not get excited about a shopping mall being one of the city's main attractions, but when it's hotter than Hades outside for half the year, malls become important focal points for locals and tourists alike. And it's a fun place to explore. Anyone who's visited Vegas will know where the inspiration for this area came from. I noticed that the gondola's poles didn't actually reach the water, so they weren't there for propulsion or steering. I spent longer than I care to admit trying to deduce how they worked, and I concluded that the poles did actually electronically control the speed and direction of the boats. Manual controls have worked in Venice for 1,000 years, but I suppose motorising the vessels speeds things up and gets more punters through each hour. And at £2 per person per ride, it is a lot cheaper here too. There's a lot of shops, including an exclusive boutique corner, plus an ice rink and an indoor theme park building on the gondola theme. Not quite the scale and ambition of the malls in Dubai, but still quite an entertaining place to spend some time. There's a few internationally branded food options, although most were at the fast food end of the scale. I actually ate at a cheesecake factory and was quite happy that I did. That's modern shopping. Qatar also offers traditional shopping at the Souk Waqif. Well, traditional-ish shopping. The buildings you'll visit today date from less than 20 years ago, after much of the original souk was destroyed by fire, but they've worked hard to create an authentic look and feel to the markets. and it is quite atmospheric, even if it's built on a pretty clear grid system, which means you can't really lose yourself in the place as you can in markets in Istanbul or Marrakesh. It also smells amazing from the spice cellars dotted around. The new design also allows the interior to stay quite cool. It's a sizable place and there are quite a few restaurants and cafes dotted around too. One corner of the market offers something unique for any market I've ever visited, a falcon souk, where falcon and falcon accessories are sold. The shopkeepers are quite happy for you to just wander in and poke around, even though I think it was very obvious that I wouldn't be buying a falcon to take home with me. And across the road from the falcon shops was a falcon hospital, which looked better equipped than many human hospitals I've seen around the world, complete with a small falcon museum. I lingered for quite some time as it was fascinating, but mostly as it had outstanding air conditioning. So that's Doha, a place that's well worth at least 24 hours of anyone's time in my opinion. To me it feels more authentic than Dubai and some of the old traditions still prevail. As I use Airalo to get myself an Uber back to the airport, which cost me just £7 by the way, I should mention that Qatar Airways offers a stopover programme if your transit in Doha is between 12 and 96 hours long. You can choose a standard hotel for $14 a night or a luxury property for just $83, and that rate includes transfers from the airport. I'll put a link in the description below, but it's well worth bearing in mind next time you plan a trip through Doha. So thanks for watching. Install the Airalo app and use the code MatsPlanet to get money off your first eSIM so that you can stay connected on your next trip. Like, comment and subscribe, and if you'd like to support me more directly, there's a Patreon account linked below. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.